Well, here we are on a November Monday afternoon. Things are looking a bit bleak outside, but inside things are looking really good. At
Oh,
least at
Jude,
this end. What about your end, Pat?
that's quite nice, Jude. Actually, like it's okay. It's a bit breezy. This is Donegal, Jude. Like remember the famous ad years ago? It's different up here. Well, it is different up here in the sense that like it's breezy, but it's actually quite nice.
We were just talking about before we came on air about that beautiful photograph you have on Facebook of your wedding day.
Yes.
What are your feelings when you look back on that, Pat? Big
Oh,
mistake.
45 years later, I've had to commit a double murder. I would have been out by now. No, Jude, it was the funniest thing. The one thing everybody, the thing that's on social media, I came across a coloured photograph. By the way, Jude, it goes to show how long ago we were married. Most of the photographs are in black and white. Now, I'm not quite sure. My wife says she knows. I didn't realise there was a colour photograph of the wedding. But anyway, for a wee bit of fun, I put it up. But the thing everybody's mentioning on Jude is I'll rephrase that. There's two things. I have a pair of shoes that look like they came straight out of a circus, and the what do you call it? The flared trousers. Somebody said you could have had an escaped prisoner up there. Now, I have to say the wife does look beautiful. I have to say.
Oh, fine. You don't have to say it. It's obvious. It's obvious. Speak for herself. Yeah. Lovely photograph. A lovely photograph. And how I envy your hair in that photograph, Pat.
I envy it myself now.
Okay, let's change the topic from hair to more important things, maybe. And that is the fact that, and you know, this Owen Patterson's debacle. John Major has weighed in and he's come in punching and kicking like nobody's business. He says that this is shameful, these plans that Boris was trying to put through to protect Owen Patterson. Yeah. And he says there's a general whiff of we are the masters now about their behavior. It has to stop soon. But sure, did we all not know that from the beginning, that they were acting with arrogance? They're an arrogant government, no?
Judy, but Judy, it has come to a sort of a sorry pass when a former Tory Prime Minister is having a go at another Tory Prime Minister. Jude, that's new territory, I would suggest, because it's heavy. Jude, there was no niceties from Major. He just went straight forward. He said basically their actions are unbecoming of a British government. That they are totally untrustworthy. And Jude, they are. Boris is so far. I took a wee note or tried to remember today. He has lied or misled the Queen. He tried to prorogue illegally Parliament. Remember, he signed a treaty with the EU, which he had no intention of keeping. He was the author or the sort of promulgator of the 350 million a week for the NHS, which he knew was a downright lie. There's a woman in Iran being held as a sort of a hostage because of his incompetence. Yep. And there's some talk about party donors have made contributions to do up his luxury flat.
Yes,
so
that's a question.
So you keep asking yourself, like, how many things does he have to do before the tide starts turning?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. But I was listening to a commentator today, and he was saying, you know, that what happens is it just bounces off him again and again until it doesn't. Yeah, you reach a point where.
But that's the point. Anybody else, a lot of the stuff would have absolutely ruined him. Major's point is basically saying is, I think what he's saying is, Boris has reached the stage that he's actually starting to do damage to Britain's international reputation. Like, who the hell would trust this government? Jude, do you seriously think that the EU will now take Boris Johnson and Lord Frost? Like, Major's point was that these people negotiated things, they signed up to them. And who's now disparaging them or slagging them off?
So that's
Boris Johnson.
That was the second leg of the attack he made. He attacked them on the Owen Patterson thing, and then he really put the boot in terms of the Northern Ireland Brexit deal. He says this idea of suspending parts of it would be dangerous and colossally stupid. Oh, I bet Boris won't like that, but colossally stupid. He says they negotiated it, they signed it, they now wish to break it. They are showing all the subtlety, he says, in their negotiations over the protocol. They're showing all the subtlety of a brick.
I remember reading that line. And Judy, but he's right. Frost is going along to the EU, giving nothing, bagging every concession he gets, and then going back and says it's not good enough. like I get the impression, and I got the impression yesterday morning as well, that the Irish government is getting seriously pissed off, and I would say Europe's getting seriously pissed off. Macron's got an election coming up next year, and I think the French have sort of, after the sneaky deal the Brits and the Americans done with Australia, after Australia had made commitments to France, and the French, I think, had actually spent billions on retooling things for that deal. And then they went and signed it. So I think the French have just probably reached the end of their tether with what's going on. But the whole thing is very, you have to come back to the sort of how can you trust a government that is so openly dishonest?
Well, just let's have a prophecy, Pat. Do you think they're going to push it all the way? They have said they're going to trigger Article 16. Coveney has said that if they trigger Article 16, that the EU will retaliate, and the whole deal could be off, and they'd have to start at zero again. Or, I mean, do you think, and do you link this to the two burnings of buses that occurred over the weekend? One last night and one a couple of nights earlier.
Jude, someone I heard Billy Hutchison on Talk Back today. Like I take Billy's bona fides, but hey, someone, it strikes me all the way that there's some sort of coordination between the DUP, the PUP, and the UVF. I don't buy this, that it's all incidental. There's a ratcheting up, even if it's not formal, there's something going on there. And Jude, the bottom line of all this is, hey, there's plenty of people in the nationalist community who've had to put up with living under Northern and the North for 100 years of unionist rule. They've had to see that they didn't vote for Brexit, but that's been ignored. So why should we pay a massive amount of attention to some people who don't like the protocol? Like nobody's getting what they want here.
Well, you see, if they keep up this, if they refuse to accept the protocol which they signed up to, as Major pointed out.
But Jude, we had to accept Brexit. But go ahead, sorry.
That's true. But if they reject the protocol as it stands, the EU will have to have a border somewhere. Between Britain and Ireland, or the south of Ireland. And, you have a choice. I suppose you could have it on, what do they call it, the Celtic Sea, where you had the ports in the south would check the goods. Or you're going to have it across a land border across, as there was in the past. I don't think that last one's a runner at all. I don't think anybody's going to do that one.
No. Well, I think that's what Major's sort of saying too. Like, Jude, they are playing fast and loose. Jude, it took a very, very long time to get peace on this island, a very long time. We had a war basically for 30 years, and we had negotiations going on from what 7, 8 years, even to get, first of all, we had talks about talks before we could even get the talks. And Jude, I think Boris Johnson and Lord Frost are actually acting the bollocks quite seriously, and we could all pay a terrible price.
Jude, are you saying then that there could actually be violence again?
Well, Jude, stop me. See, remember, a lot of this stuff. Remember when they were talking about putting the hard border in the island of Ireland? That was one of the fears.
Yeah.
It wasn't the SDLP or Sinn Féin or anybody else was warning. It was the PSNI, British security and security analysts were saying, look, this has got the potential to sort of light the fire again, which is true.
It's scary. That's scary. And they show no signs of turning back at this stage. But you would hope with common sense. I don't think there's a will. I don't think there's an appetite for violence among the unionist population any more than in the nationalist population. I don't think there's a stomach.
No, I don't think there's a big. I think people they want politics to work. Sure, Jude, didn't he do that survey there quite recently? And someone like about 75% of people, even though for all its flaws, they still want Stormont to work. Jude, that's quite considering how divided this society is. 75%, something like that. Anyway, Jude. All
you need, Pat, is one or two really dramatic, violent events, and that could swing people's views completely.
Absolutely. Jude, hold on. I know a well-known Republican. Well, he's not well-known, but he's a Republican. He says if they want to go down this road, he says, "I take two can tango." So, Jude, it's. Well, I think there's a sort of the wool has gone. It's or not that the wool has gone, but the people don't want it. They're fed up. We have had our civil war, and I don't think anybody wants to go back to it. But I think if you're going to sort of threaten all the time, threats work both ways. And that's the problem.
You're right that I'm just wondering, you're saying as things have come to a pretty pass when a former prime minister will attack a Tory prime minister, will attack a present Tory prime minister. And I'm just wondering, what was John Major's thinking there? Was he saying all those things because for the good of the Tory party? Was he saying it for the good of England? Was he saying it for peace in Northern Ireland? Wonder what his motivation was, because that speech or that statement that he handed out, well, I guess it was a speech, he had a script writer working on that before he went out, because some of the lines are very memorable.
But you know, the whole thing about Owen Paterson was an absolute disgrace. Quasi-part-time business secretary. I saw him on Sky, and it was one of the most arrogant bits of broadcasting I've come across. Basically, he was trying to throw the Standards Commissioner, Catherine Stone, onto the bus, that she should be considering her position, not Owen Paterson. I know. It was, in other words, the guilty party had become innocent and the innocent party had become guilty. It's a sort of subversion of the truth, subversion of morality. In other words, we are the masters of the universe, and and we are telling you what the truth is, and don't worry about the rest. But the arrogance, the hubris of it's smacked of unbelievable pomposity that we can decide what the truth is.
You said that you thought maybe there was a link between the PUP and the DUP and this sort of background bus burning stuff. Do you think, is there any link between, would John Major have any concerns with British people generally, have much concern about a border being re-established in Ireland?
Yeah, Jude, John Major and Albert Reynolds were one of the first people to get, they were maybe the catalyst for getting the peace, but Tony Blair and Bertie Ahern picked up the sort of the flame afterwards and carried it on. But it was Reynolds and Major. And Major had first, Jude, remember bombs going off, shootings, killings, all of it. Who the hell wants to go back to that? And Jude, it is, just because the absence of war doesn't mean we have peace. All the ingredients are still there. And I think Boris Johnson and Lord Frost are playing fast and loose. Jude, they're trying to make out, so I don't know what is. Major says they're trying to keep hardline Brexiteers, to placate them. And I think that is what's going on. But Jude, Billy Hutchins was asked by William Crawley today, does he feel any less British today than he did last year? Has it changed one iota? Dude, the bottom line of all this, and you can...
What did Billy Hutchins say? What did Billy Hutchins say to that?
It's just, no, he didn't. But he says this was in danger of changing things. And but as Crawley rightly pointed out, it's the same point I made. Dude, until the day they hold a referendum and 51% or 50.1 or one vote decides to change this constitutional position. The constitutional position hasn't changed. And Jude, this thing too, for years, even before we were in the EU, there were different rules for animals coming onto the island of Ireland. There were foot and mouth checks. There were all the rest of it. What's this thing now because of in Northern Ireland? Jude, a lot of the business community are saying this is actually very, very good for Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I think that actually is probably will be I hope it will be the deciding factor. The fact that it's good for business. And
it is good for business.
What's good for business very often prevails, for better or worse, it prevails. Okay, we'll leave that sad story. Although it's kind of fun to see John Major, who I always thought was sort of a mild figure, coming out, with fists flailing and boots flying and really socking it to Boris.
Just final, he's landed more punches on Boris Johnson than Keir Starmer has.
For God's sakes, don't start me. Don't start me. If there was a half decent opposition, they could have made hay with this one, but there you go. They left it to John Major. Okay, let's move on to an interesting wee one. This is one I noticed, I don't know where I got it, I think it was RT News somewhere. There's a large scale it's going to cover 160 acres of solar panels farm in County Carlow. And the local council were blocking it. They were saying it wasn't good for the area. It was sort of they didn't say it was a designated area of beauty, but they seemed to be suggesting it really was going to take away from the look of the whole place. And they blocked it. But eventually, the guys who want to have the solar panels on the farm, the 160 acres, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
They've been given planning permission, and you may be sure that they'll be up like a flash. Do you approve of that, or do you say, it's not a good idea to be putting these things anywhere?
Jude, something, I'm going to ruin my ecological credentials. Yes, I believe there's more than one kind of pollution, and I think there's environmental pollution. Every time I see one of them wind farms, Jude, I hate the bloody things, and I really genuinely do. You're driving along somewhere in rural Donegal, and you see this beautiful river and a lake and a mountain, and the next thing you see these, I was about to swear there, and I'm not going to swear, and you see them, and you're going, they jar, and I mean they jar big time. They're man-made.
They jar with you, but they don't necessarily jar with everybody. I have mixed feelings about them. I sometimes think they're rather graceful.
Well, you're wrong, Ian. They're awful. They are awful.
No, they're not that bad. They're not that
bad. I have heard all, hey, my brother-in-law is very much in favor of them. He says, look, wait a minute, they may jar, but he says they're producing one, they're not polluting and all the rest. But there's noise pollution, there's visual pollution, there's environmental pollution. They just look bloody awful. And I detest them. Now, having said that, I'm all in favor of renewables and things that you can the wind and the sea power and all that. But Jude, they are a visual blot on the landscape.
I know, but
you can see what you like all day long. They look bloody awful.
Well, I definitely disagree. I think they're essentially graceful things, but you could argue that they're an intervention and they sort of spoil the general landscape. But in themselves, I think they're quite beautiful. But we're not talking about wind power. We're talking about solar power here. And
but
solar panels.
Hey, Jude, hold on. I'll ask you. Do you think 160 acres or whatever the hell? I think it's 160 acres of solar panels. Do you think driving past that it looks the part, that it's no, there is such a thing as visual pollution. Someone destroys your eye line.
You'd say that too. You could say, look, here's a field, and this contractor has just built 50 houses there.
Yeah.
He really has destroyed that field. Yeah. He's polluted that field. He's filled it with bricks and mortar. We don't say that. We say, that's fair enough, and people have to live. And that's exactly the same thing with the solar panels.
That's not, Jude. Jesus, not at all. That's rubbish, Jude. 160 acres of solar panels, these wee things in the ground. I've driven past them in Spain. Now, the sun shines 300 days a year. I can see. But Jude, with the greatest respect, do you seriously think 160 acres of solar panels, one after the other, is visually sort of attractive, and it's something we should all be, Well,
it depends to some extent on what it's covering. I mean, how beautiful was the view then? Here's my plan for this, Pat. Let's say that you're right, and that solar panels are disgusting and they really look awful. I would suggest that they're part of what we have to do to survive the planet. People have to put everything, everybody's got to put their back into it. So we have to have these. So what we should have is an identification of, say, the ugliest 100 parts of Ireland, and then put the solar panels in there. Or
someone be around your mind
if you want. Wouldn't that make sense? Because not every field, not every view is a beautiful view just because there's nothing on it. And there is a certain, I don't know. I'll tell you, Pat, I remember driving, this sounds like I'm a globetrotter, but I remember driving towards or past Los Angeles. It was dusk. And suddenly, everywhere on both sides of the road, up on the hills, hundreds of these, it was twilight at the time, these wind turbines. And it was kind of eerie. It was like being in a science fiction movie or something. They almost looked like they were alive, the way the blades kept moving. We need them. We have to have them. We haven't time to piss around now. We really don't. You have to get these things in.
Look, I accept that. But hey, Jude, I would like there was some sort of aesthetics were built into them. And, could we build take your point, build them on that hundreds ugliest spots, hide them away from civilization, try and find some way to make them more attractive.
I put them in
Jude,
these
why,
bogs.
why do we
The
like
bog of
looking
Allen.
at beautiful pictures? Why do we like mountains and rivers? Because they're good for the soul. And you drive along and suddenly you see these big monstrosities that look like rotors from an airplane. You're going, Jude, they are not attractive. Don't care what you
Well,
say.
I pick somewhere like I think it'd be a prime example actually is the Bog of Allen and these great expanses where they're pulling out peat. Well, I mean that isn't exactly a wonderful view.
No, I
what they were
agree with
doing
you
there.
totally.
So replace those with solar panels.
Yeah, fair enough.
That makes
Because I've
sense.
driven past that, and it takes a couple of hours nearly to drive past it. It's a big long bog, and it goes on and on and there's nothing there. Like I remember driving on Australia, Jude, and you can drive for about 300 miles, and the road doesn't even rise an inch one way or the other. Now, the Bog of Allen reminded now much smaller scale, but yeah, you've got a point there.
Yeah. I think they should select them carefully. But I mean, obviously, on board Planala has looked at this. It has been appeal has been made, so they must have looked at it pretty closely. And given the way things are, given the fact that we all know it has to act now, if we don't act now, our grandchildren.
See, I'm on the back foot on this one because I agree with you totally. We have to act now.
But I'm usually right, Pat. You know, if you follow what I say, you'll be in safe ground. Okay.
Yes.
Number three is I didn't know this. If SpaceX it can't get its 4 space station astronauts back
down
because there was wind, and I think they may be bringing them down this afternoon or something, or tonight.
That's the plan apparently.
Did you know? They've been there for 6 months up in the?
Yeah.
I presume it's this International Space Station, is it? Or have they got their
Jude,
own?
but another thing I noticed about this, which I had to not laugh, because apparently the toilet's broken.
I knew you'd come to that one.
But you know, Jude, you read all this stuff, and then they said, "Hey, by the way, they're going to have to wear nappies on the way back."
Well, I wonder how that works. You know, that suggested to be.
Well, Jude, I don't want to get into
didn't say how long the
would
toilet was spoken for.
but I would suggest you stand well back when they land.
But listen, I thought, you know, you get all that publicity when these people went up. You know, you got these civilians going up, and when they came down, everybody said, you know, oh, bloody wonderful and so on. And you had that veteran astronaut that went up again. And didn't you have what's his name from Mr. Spock, or Dr. Spock?
William Shatner.
Yeah, Shatner went up. No connection between Shatner and the previous item. But I thought it was only you know, space tourism he's promoting. But he seems to be bought right in, and the American government seemed to be a sort of a public-private enterprise. Were you aware of that?
No, I wasn't actually. But Bezos has got more. I'd say he's got more money privately than I'd say about 40 or 50 governments combined across the globe. He's worth what? Just 300 or 400 billion.
But did you know? What I'm not talking about is his money. I'm talking about the fact that he's got, you know, these 4 guys up there for the last 6 months, and now they're coming back, and they're going to be replaced almost immediately. So he really seems to be an integral part of the American space strategy.
He is invested very, very heavily in it. And I don't know what's his motivation. Maybe he thinks we all have to get off this planet sometime in the future.
Well, I think it's making money because I've got an app, and it shows you the sky, you know, on your screen of your phone. It shows you the sky at present, and it'll show you even objects moving, and it'll identify them, you know, different planets and stars and stuff. And one of the things that's identifies is, I think it's called Stargazer or something. Dozens of, maybe hundreds even, of these small satellites that are being put up there by your man, Jeff Bezos. And they're going to be used for all sorts of stuff. I don't know what, I have no idea, but it's to do with all kinds of technology that these satellites, mini satellites, will make possible. You know, there's stuff going on there that we haven't a clue about.
Jude, I was watching last night, and it was a Scottish program about, I think it might have been the railways or something. But anyway, they had this camera on a computer, or this camera on a helicopter. And there was this, I know, like an eagle, I can't remember the name of the type thing, but they didn't want to go near. Jude, they stayed 1.5 miles away from it. yet the camera was right in beside it, like as if you were standing beside it. Now, the perception and the sort of reality and the ability of those cameras. Now, Jude, there's no such thing as being able to hide. Can you imagine what the Americans are doing? They're spying on, if they're a mile and a half up on that, Jude, it was perfection. As if you could tell the color of the bird's eyes. That's how close.
Yeah.
What they're doing to the Russians and the Chinese, they were spying on each other like the hammers of hell.
Well, I'm sure the Chinese and the Russians are doing it just as effectively, or maybe even more effectively. But did you see that there was an explosion or an effort to kill the Prime Minister, the President of Iraq? And it was done by drone. I must say that pulled me up short as well. I hadn't realized. I always assumed that the only people who had drones were the Americans, military drones, I mean.
Jude, what do you call it? The Israelis killed an Iranian general.
I make an exception.
With a drone, a gun was fired from a drone. It's a sort of totally impersonal killing. So the technology has really moved on.
Yeah. It's kind of worrying. It's like this. Always see in these movies where some wild outfit have got their hands on an atom bomb or a small nuclear device. It's that sense that this technology, which is so damn smart, that all you have to do is sit in a room and press a button and it'll go.
The Goldfinger, the James Bond, the evil one with the figure. It's almost come to pass now that the evil guy. The technology is running at such a rate that they'll be able to make an atom bomb in the backyard.
Well, at the same time, Pat, they may be able to make an atom bomb in the back garden, but they can't fix the toilet.
Yeah.
And they have to fall back on old technology like
there's no answer to that.
Yeah. Okay, final item, and one quite close to home and close to your heart too, I'm sure, Pat. A new portrait of Nobel Peace Prize winner John Hume is going to be unveiled at a major art fair in Dublin in the RDS. And I think it's this, is it this coming weekend maybe?
I think it is.
And it's going to have a whole lot of stuff. It's going to have stuff by Damien Hirst, Andy Warhol, Banksy, a lot of them. But the one that's really interesting is a new portrait of John Hume. And it's the guy who's done it is 35-year-old, and he's going to get this figure. This will sell for somewhere in the region of 50,000 euro. 50,000 euro. And it's a portrait of John Hume that shows you that his face is included, but there's also 5 roses, which represent the children, Hume children. There's a bee, which symbolizes the politician's sweet tooth. I shouldn't be laughing. And a hand to represent his wife's influence, getting him towards the peace process. What do you think, Pat? What do you think of the idea of doing that, and secondly, the money?
Well, here, let's get this clear. Myself and John Hume, I knew John Hume. I was editor of the Derry Journal, and he was MP for Derry, so we can work that out. So I knew him quite well for many, many years. And I had an up and down relationship with John. John could be quite crotchety, but here, let's get the big picture here. The man deserves everything that's coming to him, and sort of memorial. He was a giant, political giant. You didn't have to agree with him, but I'll tell you this much: Hume speak is actually almost the shorthand term for the peace process. He came up with the 3 strands. He came up for the framework with it. And the other people have tried to claim it and so on, but I heard Hume speaking it long before it happened. He also got the Americans involved. I asked him one day directly. I said, John, he said, well, look at this. He says, we've had 800 years of conflict between the Irish and the British. He says, we can't do anything because we're a small island. He says, we have about 5-6 million people. They have 60 million. He says they have all the advantages of numerical and wealth and whatever. So he says he needed a sort of a lever. And he went to America, and he built relationships. He was assiduous in cultivating the Irish Americans. And look what the famous line was, and it's quoted by somebody else. Ronnie Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. I told you this one before, Jude. Apparently they had their big summit, and at the end of the summit, Reagan was closing whatever. He says, and Margaret, what can you do for my friend John Hume? That's what you call influence.
Yeah. He certainly was and actually, he was sort of an inspiring figure in his early days. And again, this comes back to how politicians look. In his early days, he was such a good-looking guy, tall and dark-haired and slim, and just fearless leading civil rights marches and giving off to British soldiers and so on. Over the years, like all of us, time took its toll on his body, so he didn't look as good, and eventually it took its toll on his mind, and that was sort of tragic. But what I'm kind of interested in is this, Pat, not whether or not John Hume deserves to have a portrait of him and deserves to be honoured and so on, but the idea of 50,000 price tag on a painting, this is by an Irish artist called Vincent Devine. And this, he said, for example, that when he was working on it, that then Pat Hume died, and he realised, I'll have to include her in some way in this. So he put in this other thing. The fact that we're told that the 5 roses represent the 5 children, we're told that the B represents John Hume's sweet tooth, and so on. What do you think of that kind of art?
Jude, I'm not sure about that. Jude, let's get this clear. I would love to I am not an expert in all that. Well, sometimes wonder, is that catering? Is that art, or is that catering to a certain clientele? Has it been painted for a reason? But whatever, Jude, I don't know. Jude, it would be bullshitting to say that I did. I've me doubts sometimes when just the way you've just explained it about the authenticity of there's that's the only word I can think of about the actual painting itself. But sure, look, hey, if he gets 50 grand for it, fair play to him.
Well, where does the 50 grand go? I think the 50 grand.
I haven't included you.
I assume it goes into the artist's pocket.
I would presume so. He painted as his property, and what is it? Damien Hirst and Banksy and all these guys are getting millions every time. So
well, the thing is this: it's been this display or art display is sponsored or not sponsored, mounted by the same guys that did all that stuff at the Culloden Hotel in Belfast. And I think I sent you pictures of that because I went and saw it. And I was really struck by that. I thought it really hit a kind of a sweet spot between being artistic and yet you could recognize what was going on, The figures were.
Isn't there something like there's 100 items at £100?
Oh, yeah.
If whoever comes first. That strikes me as reasonable. If they're works of art and they're good value at £100, so it's not a rip-off, and if you come along, well, I'd hope it's not a rip-off, but whatever people, like, everybody has to make up their own mind. Dude, there's certain things I would go along, and if I had the money, I would pay for it. There's certain things I've seen people saying, oh, that's worth 10 million. Dude, I wouldn't pay 50 pence for it. So, like, I work on the basis of I like it, that's it.
Well, I have my doubts with regard to the John Hume thing as it's described. It sounds more like, and you hinted at it, more like advertising in a way than anything else. He's clearly wants to tell a story of John Hume, and John Hume is a great man. But it's almost like painting by numbers. Pat Hume. Okay, here's a hand. That's Pat Hume's hand, by the way. Oh, right. And so people look at it, and there's a honeybee. Oh, John Hume had a sweet tooth. Right. It's all.
It's almost like reading them in.
Yes, that's right. And it's sort of putting in another wee bit. In fact, some advertising is more subtle than that. So I've got mixed feelings. I get mad and annoyed because I don't understand modern art. But on the other hand, I don't want somebody to give me something as kind of, what's the word? Kitsch? That's what they call it, kitsch. Yeah. Even though it's a worthy subject, it sounds to me a wee bit like, well, let's say it like this. Sometimes revolutionaries write poetry, but that doesn't mean it's good poetry. And sometimes stinkers, rotten people write poetry, and it's terrific.
Yeah.
I have in mind for the second of those, W.B. Yeats. W.B. Yeats was really a fascist. When it all said and done, he was a fascist. And yet he wrote some of the most wonderful poetry. So I've got mixed feelings about it. But anyway,
who are the revolutionaries?
I'm not going to say. I'm not going to say.
I see his blood upon the rose, eh?
No, Pat. No. I don't think that's great poetry, but I think it's good poetry. I think I rather like that, actually. I rather like it. Anyway, okay. Have you any jokes, Pat?
No, not at all. Jude, any jokes?
Do you do a little bit of sketching yourself?
No, Jude,
life
I am
studies?
no, I am useless at things like that. Now, I think somewhere in me, I want to do it. I love sitting down and, but Jude, I need to go to art classes. Now, by the way, I went to school with a guy, I'll even name him, called Dermot Kearney. I haven't seen or heard of him in 50 years, but I remember we had a couple of art classes, and the way just natural talent. The guy should have been, I think he became a school teacher, and he's down about Dundalk or something. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true or not. But do you ever see somebody who was just, in fact, when we were doing our leaving cert, I remember there was an art exam, and I remember the invigilator calling down a couple of colleagues, and they stood behind him. It was genius. And I've always admired that, Jude, because I don't have that.
Mm-hmm. It is a wonderful talent, all right. I've always been attracted to art ever since I noticed the fact that there's a great deal of naked women painted.
Yeah, that was a big attraction when I was.
I felt an artistic pull towards this kind of work. And for a time, I thought it might have been my life's work, but
hey,
you win some.
I'll leave you with this. I did it when I was doing my MA years ago, and we did this thing about art, and they said one photograph of naked lady was pornography, and the next one was art. And I was going, how can you tell? And they said because one was taken by a woman artist, and the other was taken by a pornographer. I think someone like David Sullivan. Now, Jude, to me they look the same. So I always thought,
the thing you see. If it's art and you have naked women or naked people, it's eroticism.
Yeah.
But if it's sort of working class nakedness, it's pornography.
Yeah.
So
no, but the thing was, it was basically the same pose, and one was taken by a female artist whose name totally escapes me. But if I looked it up, I'm sure I could find it. And the other one was taken from a sort of like a Penthouse magazine. But they were near enough the same. But I had to laugh when I heard the lecturer, who was female, saying one of these is pornography and the other is art. And I was going, tell me the difference.
It's difficult. But you wouldn't have a naked painting in your living room, would you?
Not at the minute. No, by the way, famous Irish writers up there, if that's any good to you.
Okay. Right, Pat. Thanks very much.
Good luck.